Hello, I'm Stephen Roy Goodman, host of Higher Education Today. Welcome back to the education program that connects you to contemporary issues, people, and institutions involved in the world of higher education. I'm here in Thessaloniki, Greece, where we're going to be talking about immigration and emigration from Greece. And I'm here thanks to UDC TV, TV 100, and the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki.
Thessaloniki is the first big flood of immigrants that came to Thessaloniki. Was by the end of the 15th century, and a big number of Jews from Spain. They were exiled from Spain, and they came to Thessaloniki, and they were installed in Thessaloniki, something around 50,000 people. Thessaloniki was always a commercial port, a center of commerce, of transportation, and of activities. And when the Jews came, they grew up in this environment, and they grew up very, very, very well. And this is why Thessaloniki took the name of Jerusalem of the Balkans, or the Mother of Israel. Now, another big flow of immigrants came in Thessaloniki with the exchange of populations. In 1922, we had the exchange of populations with Turkey, and around a million, more than a million of Greeks from Asia Minor came to northern Greece, and the biggest part was installed in Thessaloniki. So this was another big flow. And then we had the Holocaust, and then we had the emigration of, let's say, after the Civil War, the people who were lost the Civil War. They fled to the then Eastern countries, Eastern Bloc countries, and then we had in between the 50s and the 60s, we had a big flow of internal immigration. People from the country, they came to Thessaloniki because they have to find kinds of jobs. Now, in order to understand that, Thessaloniki had, first of all, with the Holocaust, Thessaloniki lost 50,000 Jews. Now, if you lose about a fourth of the city, which is a very, very, very vital part of the city, the Holocaust deprived Thessaloniki of its future. So that's why, in honoring this memory, and in order never to forget, we are building together with the municipality together with the Israeli community, we're building the Holocaust Museum and Educational Center.
I'm here with Ariadni, who's one of the vice rectors. I believe you're the vice rector of Student Affairs and Academic Affairs.
Academic Affairs. Hello, Stephen.
Well, thanks for coming on. So now I know that you studied in the United States. You studied at Hofstra University. Maybe could you explain a little bit about how this university might be a little bit different or similar to Hofstra University?
Well, I studied also at Aristotle University, so I know my university here since 40 years now. Well, first of all, it's a very different system of administration. Aristotle is a public university. The legislation, even the ways that you accept students and you organize all your daily business goes through public governmental legislation. So this is a very big difference. Students do not pay, except for some graduate programs, but undergraduate programs are free. Students are not by any means are pressed to finish their studies within the predicted time. So I guess these are some of the major differences.
Well, and speaking of the level of studies and the differences, one of the reasons that I'm here is to examine the issue of the other and people coming to Greece and people leaving Greece. So why is this so important to the university?
Our campus is right in the middle of the city. It's a part of the city. Also, it's a part of the history of Greece in this area of time. The university was founded in 1926, very few years after Thessaloniki became part of Greece, before it was part of the Ottoman Empire. So all the new ideas, all the people that were involved with this new territory in the university were the ones who built the story of it. apart from that, Thessaloniki itself, it's actually in the center of 3 different continents. Europe, on one side, Africa, and of course Asia, and especially the Middle East. So we are always, it has been always a crossover of many, many different cultures.
First of all, we had a flood of around 1 million Albanians who came to Greece. Now, we have in Thessaloniki, we have more than 70,000 Albanians who have been installed. They raised their children, they went to school, they became entrepreneurs, most of them. And at the same time, we had the flows from Russia, the Greeks from Russia. And we had also Armenians who came to Thessaloniki. The community of the Armenian community of Thessaloniki was not more than 2,000 people. Now there are more than 12,000 people.
We're continuing our conversation about immigration and emigration from Greece. I'm here with Lydia and Fatime. Lydia, you're a graduate student in museum studies. Why are you studying museum studies here?
I study museum studies because actually I'm a kindergarten teacher, and I think that museum studies can help me to work better in the kindergarten or to have another career in museums, and it's very interesting for me.
And Fatime, you are from Tirana, Albania, and you're a journalist in Tirana.
In Tirana, yes.
And so what kind of journalism did you do there, and why did you come to Greece?
I was in Tirana, journalist for culture, and then I do culture heritage at school, like a master degree. I come to Greece to be with my family. Then I work as a volunteer with Albanian women here.
And what does that mean? So how are you volunteering with Albanian women?
We try to do to make something better for our women from Albania, to learn traditional music, to have something better than they have since now.
And that's an interesting point.
To integrate them.
And how do you integrate them? Through music?
To integrate them in Greek culture, to learn for Albanian and for Greek culture.
We're continuing our conversation here in Thessaloniki, Greece, and I'm here with Matoula, Scaltsa and Sokratis, Kioussis, and we're going to be talking about their vision of what this museum is going to be like. There's going to be a new museum here about immigration. So Matoula, if you could say a word or two about your vision for this museum, that would be great.
We have created DREAMY. DREAMY is an institution, a body of individuals, scholars and entrepreneurs. And the initials of DREAMY are Diaspora Research and Immigration Initiative, whose aim is to create the museum we are talking about. Why Greece needs such a museum about Greek diaspora and immigration? It's a long story. A lot of museums are being created abroad in Europe and in the States, especially for immigration and diaspora. And taking into consideration that Greece is a territory where very big movements of immigration, population movement have happened in history from 19th century to 20th century till now. Why in Thessaloniki? You asked why in Thessaloniki. Thessaloniki is considered to be mother of immigration. Thessaloniki has accepted, has received, and have sent big amounts of people, big movements of people, of populations passed through Thessaloniki and either stayed in Thessaloniki or moved further in 19th century, in 20th century, and now. So it's very crucial for the lay public and for scholars, for academics, to see that story in a museum, for people to see their material objects, the material culture in a museum, and to see their personal stories exhibited in a museum.
Well, fair enough, and I don't even think we have to get to the museum quite yet, because we have next to you Sokratis, who lived that story, if I'm not mistaken. You're Greek, but you went to England and came back to Greece?
I did. I originally received my degree at the Aristotle University, and then I pursued a master's and a Ph.D. in museology and history of science. I worked for several museums in Greece, and then one day encountered Professor Scaltsa. And so this is how we started collaborating for this program. It's a very big project. The refugees are really important, vital for Greece and for Europe. We need to realize that migration is a normality, not a problem.
Well, it's interesting you say that, but from what I understand about, and I'm not European, I'm American, but my understanding is that support for the refugees is not universal throughout Europe.
No, exactly, it's not. It should be, though.
But we should see the positive elements of migration in order to handle and to cope with it.
Exactly.
And a museum can give to everybody this image of migration, the positives of migration, and how we can handle it. On the other side, this museum will be a research center as well, where an open platform for young people that have migrated abroad during the recent years from Greece, the well-known brain drain during the Greek crisis, can connect with each other, can connect with businesses, and we can map associations around the world having to do with migration, and we intend to collaborate with other museums and institutions in Germany, in Europe, and in the States.
The overall goal for our project is to think about ways to create a museum of immigration and diaspora, Greek immigration and diaspora. And our role here is to share our understandings of immigration and diaspora history, our theoretical understandings of these issues, generate data for this project, and also create a narrative that will be the backbone of this project.
Let's say I'm an internal immigrant in Greece, maybe, yes. I'm from Athens. I study here in the University of Thessaloniki. I'm on my 4th year, and I'm studying architecture, as you said.
And why did you come here instead of staying in Athens?
Okay, it's a Greek system. We are passing some exams, so this is the city where I got accepted in the school. But actually, I started going around Thessaloniki and finding the places that I like, and now I can say that I love Thessaloniki. I'm in love with this city.
And my background in history brings this historical aspect of Greek migration from this country to the United States, especially the early stages from the 19th century until the early part of the 20th century, where there was a mass flow of Greeks trying to get a job and better their future. So the United States provided sort of this new promised land they all try to reach at some point.
And speaking of the promised land, Angeliki, you are a current graduate student.
Yes.
Are you looking at the promised land or promised lands? Are you thinking about leaving Greece? Or what is your story, and why are you contributing to this important work?
I'm a Ph.D. student in museum studies at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. And at the same time, I am a doctoral researcher at the Greek Diaspora Fellowship Program. I have been awarded a Fulbright scholarship, and I'm going to conduct US-based research in the following academic year. And I'm hoping to examine the contemporary museum practice for representing Greek diaspora and immigration in museums throughout USA. I think that the museums represent a more generalized story of immigration and fail to focus on some specific identities or stories that are also important, and they should be represented in a museum of Greek diaspora.
And in terms of that comprehension, do you envision this museum also having an online component so that way people who physically can't get to the museum?
Of course, certainly. We're planning to create a database that visitors can access easily, leave their own interpretation, and provide us with material that is important and crucial to our research. A museum dedicated to migration cannot exist without the story of the individual.
As Sokratis said before, we want to combine the grand narrative of historical events, big historical events like the movements we were talking before, with the personal histories of individuals and of everyone that has a story to entrust us.
We were very happy to encounter Richard Clarke's reference on Greece. In particular, Clarke writes that Greece is the only country that lacks a museum dedicated to the history of migration. And I think that it is now the time for us to begin that venture.
Well, that's ironic in some ways, especially given your name. I'm sitting across from Sokratis. And so you're saying that even with your name, you still don't have this museum here.
No, we don't. But it is a dream.
Hope.
We do hope. That's why we've initiated Dreamy.
And that's why we call it Dreamy. We want to declare that we are dreaming for our dream, D-R-I-M-M-I, to be a reality in Thessaloniki.
So it's really a matter of changing the system in its roots so that the municipalities will get more, will be able to make contracts, let's say, with other cities, to exchange know-how, to exchange knowledge on things, and that's that.
Actually, it's about the climate. So wherever you go, architecture follows the climate and the culture, the cultural identity of the place. So we build in a different way in Greece, in southern Greece, northern Greece, in a different way in Sweden. I mean.
And that building is because of the weather.
It's mostly, I guess, because of the weather.
That's interesting. Do you agree with that?
And yes, I have to agree. And I would also like to add that in Thessaloniki, we have many different periods in the history of the city. So there is a combination of different buildings that follow the history of the city. So we start from the Roman buildings, then we go on to the Byzantium period, and we have all the churches. The city is full of the Byzantium churches. And then moving on, the Ottoman period, and then the more contemporary city.
And what would you want somebody to know if they don't know anything about the architecture? I never really thought about architecture and weather. I've thought about architecture and empires, but I never really thought about architecture and the weather. How does the architecture and the weather come together? Can you give us an example, perhaps?
For example, in Greece, we have a lot of, we take care of open spaces or semi-open spaces. So that's a characteristic in the Mediterranean. For example, in architecture in Greece, there are balconies or terraces. So this forms the buildings. It's
interesting. So the balcony gives a warmer feeling looking out onto a public space.
Of course.
And then so the people looking at that building feel warmer, and the people who are in those apartment buildings feel warmer because they feel part of the public space.
And it ends up being a cultural phenomenon. I mean, people being more outwards. I mean.
Through culture, people can negotiate their problems and they can understand each other. We have started working in this direction, and of course, the main aim of a museum, it is through education to communicate with people in such a need.
Well, that's very interesting, but I guess what I was thinking of when you were saying that was the issue of whose story.
Right.
And I can imagine somebody who came, who left Greece, who needed a lot of money to get a job versus somebody who, let's say, came on a Fulbright. Those are very different people.
Absolutely, absolutely. Issues of class differences, gender differences, shape the kind of experience that one has as an immigrant. And it makes, as you mentioned, it makes a huge difference if you are a merchant, if you were a merchant, let's say, in Chicago, or if you were a worker in the mines in Utah, fundamentally different types of experiences. And also if you were a woman who was not working, or a businessman, immigrant man, again, you have different kinds of experiences, interfaces with American society. So absolutely, there has been differences. And also, as you mentioned, it makes a huge difference if you are, let's say, middle-class Greek American who can visit Greece every summer, bring the children here, in many ways expose them to the language. And if you are a person who cannot afford a trip to Greece every year, and you can afford only every 10 years, you have a different kind of connection and experience with Greece. So in that sense, and again, we are very aware of these differences. And again, this is our purpose, to use the appropriate term, whose story. There are many, many stories. There are many, many different perspectives. And our goal is to be as inclusive as possible.
The establishment of a museum of Greek immigration in Greece that currently doesn't exist, can contribute to fostering the public dialogue on migration today. So I believe that it's the perfect timing today in the context of the current refugee crisis that Greece is experiencing. Because through this museum, you can really combat racism, and you can achieve solidarity between diverse ethnic groups living today in a country. And museums have a great potential in achieving that, because they can present a really wide range of diverse stories through their collections, their oral history programs, their educational activities, or their outreach work.
And I think this is something that also interests the other side of the Atlantic, what is happening in Greece. I mean, it doesn't focus on things happening only in Greece, but refugees and this new migratory trend is of extreme importance, because we know how these trends and routes can shape human and global history as well. And definitely we're dealing with the very first new chapter of the new era of the 21st century. So it's of extreme importance, I would say.
And in terms of that making that a reality, let's talk about the refugees who have come. There, as you know, there are tons of refugees who've come through Europe and many who've come through Greece. The other day I went to this center, this volunteer center, where volunteers, community workers, and just regular citizens volunteer and provide food and a social space for refugees. How would those stories of those individuals be incorporated into this museum?
We have already prepared at the university in our postgraduate program of museology an educational program in order to initiate them to our culture.
And as a university, having a very large department of humanities, it was very important to see these issues and work with people in order to accommodate them. Now it's a very much different situation. The refugee crisis, it's more, if you like, it's a different case in Greece, because we have refugees who come to our country, but they do not wish to stay. However, they do stay. So you have to accommodate all these people, and this cannot be done only on a political or community level. It has to be done on a scientific level. So we are very much interested in that. the diaspora, people migrating from Greece to North America or Australia in other countries, it's a different issue from the refugee crisis, but also it connects all this, it connects the issues that have to do with identity, the way you define yourself, the way you work with the other, and of course, we are in a country of crisis. When people are in a crisis, they're always looking for others to blame. And there are lots to blame around. So this is very important for our university.
We need both tangible and intangible evidence for the representation of migration and diaspora. We can't base our work only on history and on the importance of historical facts. We need material objects and we need oral testimonies.
Greece is between East and West, North and South. So it's the right place for this mingling to be done and to happen. And you also should take into consideration that the museum does not only show, but performs as well. It means that we can have events with all those people working together in common projects.
Thank you very much for watching. We hope you've enjoyed this show about immigration and immigration from Greece. If you would like additional information about the DREAMY program, please go to the website at drimmi.gr. If you would like to send a message to us at our viewer mailbox, please do so at highereducationtoday@topcolleges.com. And thank you very much again for watching. We will continue to bring you quality discussions about important matters in higher education. I'm Stephen Roy Goodman, and you've been watching Higher Education Today.